And here we are, our first recap, our first review of the 2025 indoor season. Welcome back. I am the track nerd. Welcome to my channel. Please like and subscribe. Today we're going to go over the very first official weekend of the 2025 indoor season. And I'm going to do things similar to the format that we've had before, where we have a four-leg format similar to that of a relay. But in how we talk about today's athletes will be similar to how I wanted to start the season last year. So, of course, we're going to always talk about the number one performances. But we're going to talk about the number one performances that stood out and some of the stories that go along with those number one performances. And we'll get things started right away. We have our four-leg format. Our first leg, we will deal with sprints. And notice I didn't say any hurdles because none of the hurdles standout performances really stood out to me as of yet. What probably next week when we have some really big meets coming is when we'll see some. But let's talk about what we saw in not Division One or two or three or even on the JUCO level. We saw an NAIA. Our first eye-popping 60-meter time came from a guy by the name of Barnabas Agger of William Carey of the NAIA division. He is an Olympian, competed for Ghana. This is clearly a talented man. And normally we don't give the NAIA a lot of looks. But he ran 6.52 and against primarily Division One talent. And 6.52, regardless of who you're competing against, is going to always stand out, especially when that is your season debut. Is he going to run sub 6.5? He's already ran low 10.0, so he probably has a 6.4 in those legs. We'll see. But he broke the NAIA record. I don't think there's ever been anyone under the 6.6 in the NAIA division. And here's this man, Barnabas Agger of William Carey by way of Ghana, leading the entire collegiate world in the men's 60-meter dash. We can't even guarantee or even expect that next week, or even for the rest of the month for that matter, someone will actually break that because that's going to require an even lower 6.5 or a 6.4 performance. And does someone have that right now? Agar is technically could be considered a professional athlete. He competed for Ghana. He is a bit older, born in '98. So just someone young, a young college student, have a 6.51, 6.50, or a 6.49 in their legs like right now remains to be seen. I mean, we have Favor Ash of formerly of Auburn by way of Nigeria, now at Oregon. Could he possibly next week? We'll see. The other big performance in the sprints came on the women's side, and it came from a freshman. I know that we're still waiting for that freshman video and that transfer video that should come out this week. But let's also talk about someone that I'm going to have to add to the list. That's Kelly Euphedamia of East Carolina. She is the first woman of the year to go under 23 seconds in the 200, 22.99. What a way to debut in your season. She also ran 7.26 in the 60, but that 22.99 really stands out. This is a very talented young woman, clearly, excuse me. Don't know if she will be, what we saw from Jamesia Ford, who ran that 22.3, but she's starting at 22.9. She may be this year's Jamesia Ford, so we'll see. And that's our leg one. Really short and simple. We'll hand off to leg two, which will be the distance event. And I say event because there's only one that stood out. No major distance athletes I saw really ran or competed this weekend. We had a few up in Ann Arbor at University of Michigan that ran. But the one that stood out, and the only one, and that's because she was mentioned last week in our preview, that is Kimberly May of Providence. She is my early prediction to win the mile. She has been, incredible talent for Providence. She's anchored their DMR. She's been kind of their distance queen. And I think that she's kind of proven that she may be the country's distance queen because she ran a 4:28.33 in the mile to start the season. She's already under 4:30 this early. this is giving Maya Ramsden vibes. She clearly seems to me to be really kind of a step ahead. I mean, there's still more of the season to come. And I know that sounds like I'm backtracking, I'm not, because that time and that performance helped solidify my conviction that she's the number one athlete. I am really convinced of her performance. I'm really convinced that she is sort of our next darling in the mile. And it seems that every so often we get an athlete like a Maya Ramsden, and then we go through this lull where we don't think we're going to have an athlete that can potentially compete at the same level. But for her to start her season, I mean, let's put things into perspective. She started the season in what will likely be her primary event under 4:30, and it was at the UMass Amherst Flagship Invitational. So up there in Boston, or excuse me, Massachusetts, she's already under 4:30. And Providence is looking like they might have a strong DMR again, possibly, because there's another top miler on their team, fellow senior Alex Miller. So we'll wait to see. I made my notes here, and I've said this already. You have your prediction is looking really good. So I very impressed with Kimberly May. 4:28:33. I mean, how lower do we expect for her to go? Who else will be able to compete with her on that level? Of course, we're expecting possibly someone from Oregon. So it remains to be seen. But Kimberly May, what a way to start the season as our sole distance conversation for today. Our third leg is where we're going to do most of the discussion today, and that's the jumps. And the jumpers were on fire this weekend. And I'm not even sure if I'm covering enough. And I made notes, but these, again, this was just to highlight the big performances of week one. Pretty sure it'll change week two, but I just got to talk about some of these great marks. And I'll start in the men's high jump, and that's Tito Alofe of Harvard, either Alofe or Aloof. I apologize, young man, for if I'm mispronouncing your last name. But I mentioned him last week in the preview and feeling even stronger about my prediction that he's going to be a name to be reckoned with. He jumped 7 feet 2.5 this weekend, 2.20 meters to lead the nation in the high jump. That is a great start to the season. Not expecting, a 7.5, 7.6 to start, but to start the season at 7.2, 2.5, we could be seeing that 7.5, 7.6 probably by the end of this month. So it remains to be seen. He's at Harvard. This program has really stepped its game up. They're really competitive, specifically in the field events. And could he be a Kenneth Ikiji? We'll see. But shout out to him already at 7 feet 2 this early in the season. And almost looked kind of comfortable in some of the pictures that I've seen from the meet. So remains to be seen what else can happen. He's not my prediction to win it, but I do think he is a name to be reckoned with. And I think this is an event where I did not necessarily stamp someone down, you're the guy, like I did Kimberly May, where I was pretty sure that she was going to be, the name to beat. But I do think he's going to be in the mix. In the women's high jump, Jenna Rogers from Nebraska. Oh, what a shock. A Nebraska athlete doing well in a technical event. And here's the thing. Jenna Rogers' mark is really impressive. 6 feet 3.25 inches, 1.91 meters. That is good enough to win a national title. Legitimately. That is an insanely good mark this early in the season from that program. She's going to improve. I think it's fair to pencil her in probably for the Big Ten championship. I was not expecting a mark like that from anyone in the Big Ten. Not an Illinois jumper, not someone from Ohio State, from Iowa, from Michigan, from Rutgers, from any of the league program, not even Oregon. That is an impressive mark this early in the season from Jenna Rogers. We'll be hearing more from her later on. And then, of course, there was another big mark, ironically in the Big Ten, from Takoria Humphrey from Illinois. 22 feet 3 inches, 6.78 meters. And as great as of a performance that is, because she's over 22 feet indoors early. So are we looking at a 23-foot jumper come outdoors? I mean, Petros, we mentioned him here before. This man is so good with coaching jumpers and multi-event athletes. He just keeps proving it again and again. And he really kind of proved it this weekend. Illinois had 5 athletes surpassing 21 feet. 5! I don't think the Big Ten had 5 all last year. Are they going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the Big Ten? Even with schools like Ohio State and Michigan and USC and Oregon and UCLA, which have great, jumping programs. UCLA not as great as they had been in the early 2000s and the 90s and the 80s, but still UCLA. My goodness, this was insane. The fact that he has 5 elite level jumpers already, that is a phenomenal sign of what is to come at the University of Illinois. And to Toria Humphrey, you're already over 22 feet, and that looks kind of comfortable, young lady. Are you going to give us a high 22-foot performance later this year? Are you going to give us a 23-foot performance? I, whew, I thought no one was going to be as good as Edric Floreal at Texas, but look, we cannot ignore Petros. This man can really coach. To have that many athletes performing that well in the long jump this early, impressive. And then another big mark in a jump event, the triple jump, from a young woman I saw in person last year, and she's been mentioned on my channel here a number of times, Shantae Foreman of Clemson. In the triple jump, 45 feet, 5 inches, 13.84 meters early in the season? What are you doing over 45 feet this early? She's an All-American. She's insanely talented. She also runs on Clemson's 4x1. She is from Jamaica, so we know that she's a gamer. She's going to be really competitive, looking to always win gold. Perhaps I should have mentioned her last week in my preview. I'm not strangling for the names I mentioned. But what I think that this says is that the triple jump competition for this year is going to be very tough. And I mean very tough. This is clearly a deep field. The 3 names that I had mentioned last week are all 45-foot jumpers or better, and she's already there now. Who else is to come? I think this might be the most competitive event. And that's not ignoring what we're going to see from the long jump, clearly, because Illinois is trying to dominate not just the Big Ten, but the whole country. But the triple jump should be really exciting come later on in the season, and specifically outdoors. And we'll move from the jumps to our anchor leg, and that's the throws. And this is an Ole Miss show, clearly, because that's what I saw this past weekend that just blew my mind. Tariq Robinson O'Hagan, he was, the mention during the preview. He is the guy that I think that will win. I feel very strongly about that, and more convicted of that now that he begins the season with the number 1 mark in the country, 67 feet, 3.5 inches, or 20.51 meters. And he's almost leading the country in the weight throw as well. More to see on that this season. I'm curious to see when, Kenneth gets things going and the other competitors. But for him to have that already, just, wow. He just continues to be impressive. And I'm, as you can tell, a little speechless. Because I wasn't expecting for him to have that type of mark this early. Some of these performances don't lead me to believe that this is gonna be their one and done. It's just like, you've had a history of progressing. What is the end gonna look like for him? And then also on the women's side, it was Akaoma Odalugu. And she's the world junior champion. She just won this past August. So she's sort of the next thrower queen from Ole Miss. Connie just can coach the throwers. Can we just give her that? Landing at Ole Miss was so clutch because she has not missed with any of her athletes. Here she is with another star. 60 feet, 3.25 inches, 18.37 meters, already over 60 feet in January. Take that in. She is already over 60 feet in January. Are you serious? And she's young. It's like almost as if she may not know just how good she is just yet, but that World Junior title says, I kind of know, but you didn't, and now you do. So let's make sure we add her to a name to be reckoned with. Akaoma Odalugu of Ole Miss. And that is our week one review. I do want to point out thank you for all those who engaged in me in the comments of the preview. But this coming week is going to have some really big performances. It's a lot of great competition coming this weekend. It is MLK weekend, so of course we're going to have people at the Razorback Invitational in Arkansas. We'll get to see the debut of Florida. There's going to be a great meet in Texas. I mean, there's a lot of great competition to come this weekend. I'm positive the rankings will shake up and we'll have a much longer show, a much longer video next week because there will be more performances. But I am really satisfied with what we got. I mean, it's so early in the season, and the performances that we got this weekend, some were insanely impressive. And also a reminder just how deep some schools are. I think we've kind of not mentioned enough about, smaller conferences and smaller schools. And I think that's going to get shaken up a little bit during this season. I'm not going to predict anything special here, but I think we're going to have some bigger names from the smaller schools this season. And it's funny because what the transfer portal has done is it allowed for those students who have that big year at a smaller school to take advantage of any potential NIL money or to have their name at a bigger school, take advantage of that experience. Oh, the school has more prestige. They go to bigger meets, or it's just because their name is bigger. But I do think the smaller schools will have a lot to say this season, especially with some of the marks that we saw from this past weekend and some that were set early in December. So thank you for being with me. Look forward to chatting with you again later this week when we look at some of the freshmen and we look at some of the transfers who could make a strong impact. Thanks for your support. See you soon.